Welcome to the next episode of the Iowa Girls Wrestling Podcast. I have former classmate Amy Guldner, who was a great high school athlete. Um, Went to college. I don't think she played sports in college, but we'll talk about that. Became a lawyer, a wife, a mom, and now is a speaker coach. I watch her stuff every week on Instagram, and just fantastic. Very very much mirrors what I'm doing here. How you doing today?
I'm great, Troy. Thank you so much for inviting me to have this conversation with you today. I've been looking forward to this for a while.
Oh, it's definitely going to be fun. I thought we'd start just because I'm not even sure how you got to where you're at with the coaching and speaking. How did you get where you're at?
Oh, well, it is kind of a long story. Your listeners probably don't have all the time for that, but I guess long story short, I was one of those people pleasers. What should a good girl do? Oh, I should do this.
Hmm.
I should do that. And as I was growing up trying to figure out what I wanted to do in life, I was always getting this message that, well, you should go to law school or you should go to med school. Those were really the only two choices that, family, teachers, other people seemed to present to me. So as I was graduating college, I, picked my major at the last minute, wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And then I'm graduating from Creighton with degrees in psychology and organizational communication and said, well, I guess maybe I'll go to law school. People have been saying that for a while. I don't know what else I want to do. Just a lot of indecision. But then went to law school just kind of on that whim. And then did well enough in law school to get to work for a big firm. I went to Phoenix out of Iowa City. So I worked at a firm there. And then when my husband and I got engaged, I moved to Southern California. That's where he was working. And my firm had an office in Southern California. So I was able to stay with the same law firm. And I was with them for a good chunk of the beginning of my career. And then I briefly went to another large law firm when my firm decided to pull the plug on reduced hour arrangements. So I'd had two kids at that point and was trying to kind of be a part-time lawyer, but still do mom stuff. And with the economic downturn in 2008, they were pulling back a lot of those arrangements. So I went to another firm briefly, and then I started with some colleagues doing freelance lawyer work so that I could be much more present at home and just do piecemeal project-based work. And then I was just continuing to do that, joking still that I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up, even though now at this point, like I'm, hitting late 40s and still saying I wasn't sure. And it was when I stopped drinking alcohol that everything started to crystallize. And then I said, okay, this is what I want to do. Kind of for the first time in my life, I felt like this is something that I was choosing really for me rather than societal expectations and that type of thing. So I said, I want to help other people who are struggling like I was because I had been on a long journey to change my relationship with alcohol. And I also thought at that time I could see myself speaking to law firms, bar associations, legal conferences, and things like that because I'd been exposed to so much of that over the years. And a lot of it was on substance use because lawyers have a massive problem with alcohol. So I thought maybe I could speak to some law firms and just share my story, which is very different from the typical rock bottom. I got DUIs, I was blowing deadlines, showing up for trial drunk. I couldn't relate to any of that, but I knew that there were a lot of people that were in my situation. So I said, maybe I'll just kind of get a coaching certification and just kind of see where that goes. And that was I think I started the coaching certification program in March of 2021. Stopped drinking 5 years ago next week. So my
Very nice.
sober anniversary is July 26th. So, and I've just been doing less and less legal work at that since then, and more of the coaching and speaking. Initially it was limited more to alcohol, but then it sort of broadened more to mindset, success, other things, because for so many people, when they ditch alcohol, that's like just the beginning. Okay, like now what? You've been playing small with your life by whether it's drinking every night or drinking on the weekends, whatever it might be. So then a lot of people are like, okay, now what? Is it writing a book? Is it starting a podcast? Is it launching a business? Is it getting involved with some philanthropy? So that's what I've been doing and, went from Iowa, Arizona, and Southern California now for 25 years. But I get back to Iowa, as you know, as quite
Yeah.
a bit. I'd say probably at least 3 to 4 times a year because my parents are still there, my siblings, nieces and nephews, and I wanted my kids to know their Iowa family well. So we get back there quite a bit.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, that's your story kind of echoes some of the things that I've done too. I haven't completely quit drinking alcohol. I mean, it's pretty rare. It's a once or two, three times a year type of thing, more of a special times now, not necessarily a daily, but just that whole not knowing exactly what I want to be when I grow up. I've, just kind of gone to this job, but I've always known coaching was my thing. I've loved coaching. And then mindset stuff has really become big in athletics. I thought we'd start maybe going back because this will be fun for us. Denison High School. Um,
Mhm.
I, I, I think from what I can see, and there's actually quite a bit of coaching tree coming out of the coaches that we had. Especially, I mean I see it in the wrestling world quite a bit because I run into those people still. But what do you think some of the teachers and coaches that we had? I think we had fantastic teachers and coaches, and they inspired us to do great things. What do you think was special about that group of individuals?
Oh, that's a great question because I agree with you. And reflecting on my experiences just to get ready for this interview with you, I was, going through the different sports and different coaches and different teachers and struck as well by what a fabulous experience overall. Of course, there's a few negative things here
Oh
and
yeah,
there, but so limited on that front. And I don't know exactly like what it was about Denison that made things so special. But even just over the years, talking with people from even other, small town Iowa school districts, I think there was something that was really special there in Denison. And I wish I knew so that we could help other, districts replicate it today. But, and especially too in like the sporting world, when you think of the fact that Title IX had passed when, I was not even a year old, and
yeah.
yet I just had amazing, girls sports experiences in high school and all of that. So I'm not sure what it was about Denison, but it was awesome. And I am so proud of the fact that I grew up there and definitely lots of positive experiences, both academically and athletically.
Yeah, it's funny you said Title IX. I actually had Miss Getch came and talked to my wrestlers last year about Title IX. She didn't actually get a benefit from it because it was prior to her, but she brought all kinds of information and she played field hockey and she brought her field hockey stuff and it was kind of cool. She was always I don't know I always kind of had bonded with her a lot. I don't know why, but Miss Getch and I always really enjoyed being around. But we had one mutual coach Brent Hagan, who was the
Yeah.
wrestling coach, and then cross country coach. Cross country, I don't know if that was so. When I look back and I think of Amy, it was Leinen at the time,
Yep.
as a high school person, athlete. I saw someone that was at the top of our class for academics, a great cross country runner, state level cross country runner, played basketball. Everything you did was seemed kind of on the upper levels of everything. And now I look back and I think of all the girls. I have some of those same girls that I coach now, and I think I wonder what her mindset was because I know some of these girls don't think like I see them. What I saw is not what they view themselves. How did
Mhm.
you view yourself in high school?
Oh, I think a lot of it was just this treadmill of constantly performing and getting all of my self-worth and feeling, that I was a good person in the world from achievement, unfortunately. And I think that's what kind of led to a lot of my own demons down the road. But it was, never enough. If I had the 92%, it was like, why didn't I have the 95%? If I had 95, why not 98? If I got third in the 800 in the track meet, why didn't I get first? And some of that was, from some outside influences too. But I think a lot of that was stuff I internalized very early on that this is what I did, I just went out and really just tried to excel in anything that I did. And if I wasn't excelling at it, well, then I didn't want anything to do with it. Like I remember, parents throwing us in swim team primarily just to get comfortable with swimming and to be
Yeah.
safe in the water. But I was horrible, like absolutely horrible. The only ribbons or medals or anything I ever got from swim team was when there was like three people in a race and they were giving first, second, and third ribbons. So I would get the third place ribbon, but I wasn't good at it. So I was like, no, no, I don't want to do that thing. I want to do these things that I think I can do well at. And then I think just kind of have an inner drive to exceed. I mean, to just, yeah, try to be the best of things, but not always from the healthiest place.
Yeah. So, um, why don't we? Well, I gave you a list of things that I see the mindset of my high school girl athletes. Why don't we try to start going through some of those and maybe see how we can maybe help them, help me coach them, and then those that are listening, maybe how to accept those emotions or whatever we can do. Um, Not good enough, not being good enough. Actually, that was one of my I always have one word mantras and stuff like that for every season, and on the back of our shirts that actually said enough. And so every day we'd break it down to I am enough, that type of thing, because it's something that many people don't believe. What's in your experience? What's something we can do to kind of work on that?
Well, first of all, thank you for doing that work with them. We know that high school sports are really just an activity, a training ground for life. It's not that, you're doing it so that you will someday make millions of dollars in that particular sport. It's to develop yourself and to learn these valuable lessons, things that you will take with you throughout your life. And that lesson right there, if we could get more people, especially girls, to internalize that, is fabulous. And I'm so grateful that we didn't grow up with social media, because all of the numbers and statistics I see on the negative impact that has is devastating on a mental health and physical health as well. So thank you for doing that. My thought that came up when you asked that was dealing with an inner critic. So I think what we can do on that is trying to be more mindful of the voices that are coming into our head. And rather than, like, until probably 10 years ago, I used to think that if a thought came into my mind, that it was to be believed. Like, I wouldn't just have these thoughts for no reason. So if a thought came in there, it's like, oh, I better listen to that. I better do something about that. But I've learned in this coaching space, neuroscience, all the things, that the thoughts are just things. Our brains are thought secreting machines. That's what they do. But our job is to sort of double check those thoughts as they come in. Like, is that really true? How does that thought make me feel? How does that thought make me behave? And then you can start to sort of show the subconscious mind, like, oh, actually, that doesn't feel so good. Like, that's that's not something I want. Then it will let go of those things more. But I think for me, I had a nasty inner critic, and maybe law school just ramped it up on steroids. I could cross-examine myself. I could, like, be as mean and nasty. And it led me to really dark places, telling me, for portions of my life, that the world would be better off without me, that my kids would be better off without me. Like, the best thing I could do would be to end my life. And that was like this inner critic that I think, like so many things, we think it's protecting us, we think it's helping us, but the more we can start to change that inner voice and the sooner we can do it, I think the better off that we are. So in terms of being enough, we can start to check those voices and realize that self-compassion is the key. And it's not just this ooey gooey thing that's going to make you give up when you're on the mat and you're you're like, it's not going to do that. But I think we used to think that, like, oh, if we're nice to ourselves, then we're not going to be getting up at 6 a.m. and going for the run or doing the things that we need to do for our sport. The science has shown it doesn't work that way. The self-compassion goes so much further than the self-criticism. So I think, the more we can work at an earlier age of checking those inner voices that are telling us that we're not enough, and have compassion for ourselves, like we're doing the best we can with the tools that we have, that simultaneous accepting where we're at and also challenging ourselves to grow. It's not either or, it's both and. but a lot of times we're just so driven to keep getting better and better, then we can't ever stop and enjoy where we're at. And then that just creates a lot of unhealthy pressures on us for the future. So I think that changing the inner critic to an inner champion, like someone who is cheering us on. And what I tell a lot of people when I work with them on this, and a lot of them are drawn to me because I share so openly about how nasty my inner critic is I said it's very simple. It's talking to yourself like you would to a really good friend. A friend of yours, loses a really tough match or whatever. What do you say? Like, oh, you're just such a piece of garbage. I can't believe blah, 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 blah. No, like we're trying to cheer them up and encourage them. And the sooner we can adopt that as our own inner voice, the better we're going to be and the less challenges we're going to have with those not enough demons.
Yeah, no, I like that. And you're right. We talk to ourselves much worse than we'd ever talk to even people we don't like. We talk to nicer than we talk to ourselves. Isn't that amazing? That's
Hmm.
kind of a crazy thing. And then I would say, as we're sitting here listening to you, I'm thinking, coaching, maybe when when we look back at how coaching used to be, and I look at how maybe I was coached, and sometimes that negative reinforcement was always there. Um, I try to be a much more positive coach. And I don't know if I know this is true of boys too and girls, but I sometimes I think girls maybe take it more to heart. Um, they already think maybe that they're not good enough, and then I give them a negative, you know, where a boy maybe motivates him. I remember being motivated by being called a piece of crap. You know what I mean? And in
Yeah.
different ways. Well, I'm going to prove him wrong, type of thing. Well, sometimes I feel like if I say it, now there's someone reinforcing their already thought that they're not doing well, and next thing you know, they believe that. Maybe they heard it from a friend too, or maybe they heard it from somebody that's not their friend, but they see it online now. They get a comment, well, that was maybe they posted a match, well, that was dumb. Why'd you do that? Or any of that thing. So the more they get that reinforced, the more they start believing it. That's why I try to be a very positive coach. And actually in our room, we're almost, I would say 95% of the time it's very positive. The only time negativity comes out is maybe when those days that we need to get motivated a little bit better.
Mhm.
And it's not even a negative way I do it, but um, how
Sometimes you gotta light a fire. So,
exactly. So is that, I mean, would you say that that's so here's a example. I don't know how many times I've seen this a male wrestler, a high school boy, that man, he's really not that good, but he doesn't know that he's not good. And so he goes out and he wins anyway, despite the fact that as a coach, I'm looking at him going, how did this kid win a match? And then I see these girls that are incredible athletes that go out and win and win and win and do great. And then but they don't believe they don't believe that they're at that level, that they're okay. That how is that possible? And why, why does that happen between boys and girls?
oh, well, what comes to my mind on that is imposter syndrome. And it is so prevalent. And I mean, they used to initially think that it was just like high achieving females that suffered from it. It was the term was coined back in the late 70s. And I think it was specifically with like women that were in med school. And they just kept thinking that they were not up to snuff, that they were fake, they were frauds, they'd be found out, all of that. And then now, though, we've learned that males suffer from this as well, and that it happens kind of throughout the lifespan, so it's not just as limited as we used to think that it was. But yeah, there is like we get these messages kind of early on that yeah, somebody's gonna figure out that we don't really know what we're doing, or just some other message. I think sometimes people pleasing, and like that the girls should be, just really humble, and we shouldn't be bragging and have the swag out there that, we're gonna do this. So I think that, just but even recognizing like imposter syndrome is something that is quite damaging on mental health. In fact, like the State Bar of California, I know they even have like their well-being page has or they have a separate page for like dealing with imposter syndrome because it can lead to suicide at the extreme. And so I think the more we educate people about it, like this is a really normal thing that like you can have this success, but you're struggling to internalize it. And that's the difference. I think sometimes maybe initially, maybe some of the guys might be able to internalize their success differently, but girls are like, oh, it was, I was just lucky, it was just a fluke, it's not going to happen again. Like we've got these messages. And I think, at its core, all these like negative things that we do is our brain trying to protect us, thinking it's helping us with something. I don't believe we ever intentionally self-sabotage. I think we just go about meeting our needs in really misguided ways at times. So the more we can just recognize like, okay, brain, I know you think you're trying to protect me here by telling me these things, but you're actually you're not helping right now. So we need to kind of go about that in a different way. But I think helping people, the key on imposter syndrome is working on internalizing those successes and saying that like, yes, I did well because I've put in the effort, because I'm listening to my coaches, because I'm, doing like all of these things. It wasn't just a fluke. It wasn't something that was random or chance, and then so that they can take those successes on and be proud of them without that fear that, we didn't grow up in Texas, but I hear they say, you're going to get too big for your britches. So I think women in particular, don't want to do that. But it's important that we take on those successes so that we know that, like, this is who we are. And then that can help with that imposter syndrome and those beliefs down the road.
Yeah, I mean, I can see where maybe the idea in the 70s with the doctors, female doctors being first into a male dominated profession,
Hmm.
lawyers first into some male dominant professions, female wrestlers. One of the things what a mantra not too many years ago was "You belong here," and
Yeah.
that was a big thing, is us trying to get people to understand. Other coaches, still to this day, I still have I run into some coaches that don't believe girls belong on the mat,
Mm.
and so I can see where that imposter syndrome really definitely comes into play. Um, that our body protecting us, anxiety is
Mhm.
is a big thing. Um, how was your anxiety prior to athletic events?
Oh, and in high school, it was terrible, absolutely terrible. No matter how prepared I was, what we had done ahead of time with coaches and all of that, I would just, especially cross country and track. I think those individual sports, it was much heightened compared to basketball. But yeah, I mean, I remember routinely throwing up before cross country meets. And, like even certain courses today back there, Missouri Valley Golf Course, like I can show like, oh, yep, that's where I puked for that meet and that meet, all of that. So just so much pressure on myself. And then it really did detract from being able to enjoy the sport and being able to enjoy the competition. I mean, I still sought out the competition. I still wanted to do it, but I think, going back, if I had had some better tools in my toolkit for dealing with the anxiety, it would have made a more pleasurable experience, a little less vomit before the competition.
Yeah, one of the things I try to tell kids, and I don't know where I heard it. I mean, obviously, by now, coaching is all just regurgitated things that we've heard and we see, and nothing's very little is actually new. But I was told that being nervous and being excited are the same emotion,
Yep.
and so it's just how we frame it in our minds. Do you have any anxiety tips that you could give us? Because I know anxiety. I think it's actually just us projecting into the future. You know, and most of the times it's irrational thoughts into the future. Into the future, is there something that we could do as everybody gets it, but is there something we can do as people just to be a little less anxious?
Yeah, well, the one you mentioned is the main one that I work with clients on is that it's the same exact feeling, that butterflies in the stomach, anxiety and excitement. So reframing is the main tool that I use. My coaching business is reframing well-being. I started initially as reframing alcohol. So that tool is is my favorite go-to. I find that it applies in so many different areas of life. So I think reframing that anxiety as excitement, but also like, okay, this is just my primitive lizard brain that's trying to protect me from something. But our brains haven't evolved. We don't have the saber-toothed tiger anymore that's chasing us down. Like, we don't need that, but the brains haven't realized that. Or the brain thinks this is going to help her. If I make her feel really anxious, then she won't maybe do these things that I think are dangerous. She might lose, she might, or something else may
Yeah.
not go well. So reframing it as the excitement and as something that's just sort of a tool that we don't need anymore. This is lizard brain. We can bring our prefrontal cortex on board, and we can, like, yeah, of course I'm feeling these butterflies. This matters to me. Like, I'm feeling this because this is important to me, not because I'm not ready or all these bad things are going to happen. But I also want to challenge you a little bit there. You were talking about how this coaching stuff is all just kind of stuff that's been around. I think one of the things that I've seen you do really well with this, and really good coaches, are you're taking the stuff that's been around for a while, but you've got your own unique experience, your unique, outlook on things. And so you're putting all of that together in a unique way. And there's not a lot of coaches that are doing that positive approach that you're doing. So I want to give you credit and make sure you're giving that to yourself too, that you are doing some really cool things. And they are new because it's come no one has approached this the way Troy Greeter has before. So keep it up. We really, really need that, I think. And especially with girls sports and with the way girls wrestling is just exploding. I would just love to have, more coaches like look at you and then, of course, then take their own take on it, but realizing the success that you've had with that precisely because you are so intentional about how you speak to the hearts and minds of these athletes and not just to how they're performing on the mat.
Yeah, I've been fortunate in coaching, and I've been around some really good people. We surround ourselves with really good people, right? If you're going to be successful, that's what you got to do. So I always Jason Shepard coaches with me. He's a professor at Buena Vista University. The guy is just amazing. So we're able to bounce those ideas off of each other. We listen to people like Nick Mitchell at the Grandview University, who's won, is it 12 or 13 or 14, national titles in like the last 15 years. I mean, the guy's amazing. But his one of his big philosophies is championship lifestyle, is how he preaches, and everything comes from that. That no matter what we're doing, whether it's um, being a good parent, well, for me it's being a good parent, but for being a good child, helping your parents around the house, doing our best at everything we do at school, at being a good friend, at being a good girlfriend or boyfriend, everything matters because we can't take time off. We can't take time off of being our best. And so that's one of the cores that I take from. And then I seek out and listen for those tidbits. I heard one today that I'm definitely gonna use. We have to stop. How is it? We have to stop playing for the points and playing for the love of, instead play for the love of the game. And
Mm,
I that's not exactly how it goes, but that's the idea.
yeah.
It was in context of someone um, had maybe a similar situation to you, had been grown up and was told they needed to be a CEO of a company, and was a CEO of the company, and had been inspired by someone's book. And I don't even know what the book was. I have to look more into that. But instead and decided that their life's ambition was to fix bicycles, and had
Mm.
actually quit, but started a small business out of their own garage, and we're happy now because they stopped playing for the points and actually for the love of that. And that was kind of a cool little story, and I'm sure I've not said it exactly right, but it was something I want to start using for sure.
I love that. And that made me think a little bit of Don Lyon. So he came to Denison when we were seniors and he took over
Yeah,
the girls basketball program. So I just played under him for 1 year. And then he went on to do a lot with the baseball there in Denison.
yeah.
And now he's
Baseball and
refereeing,
girls
helping.
basketball was amazing there too for quite a
Yeah, yeah,
while.
because we were, so the year we graduated was 89, and then I think
Hmm.
girls switched from the 6-on-6 to the 5-on-5 in 91.
Yep.
And I see so many parallels now as I hear about with the folk style and freestyle with wrestling and
Yeah.
like preparing, for college competition and all of that. So it's interesting to see some of that stuff coming, thinking about it anyway, because I was, one of the last
Hold
groups
on
that
one second.
played. Oh, that's
Hold on one
okay.
second. My grandkids are freaking out. I'll be right
Oh,
back.
no
I'm gonna
problem.
pause. Perfect. All right. We're sorry for the little short interruption there, but you were on Don Lyons.
Yes, yeah. So I was thinking about, sort of what made him the coach that he was for us. And, one of the things was that I don't think he had his own ego and his own sense of value and, worth to the world was tied into how we performed and whether we won or lost the games. But he also just had this really neat way of focusing us on perspective. And I remember, and I think I still have it in my closet. I have like a jewelry thing and I have this little laminated card. So he gave us these little cards that were like basically the size of a business card. But every year he said he'd been doing this for a while before he came to Denison, and he had us like write our top 10 goals on it. We had to write pretty small. And then, would have certain things like tell your parents you love them, because I think he lost either his mom or dad at a really young age, and had like a number of things that he had us like, still make it individual, but like write these on this card. And then he had
Mhm.
it laminated and gave it back to us. And it was something that a lot of us just really internalized, I think, as like this is the stuff that really matters in life. It's not really necessarily whether, we win so many games or whether we make it to state or whatever it might be, but it's that perspective that so many young athletes and even older athletes are lacking, but also it comes from coaching. And I think when the coaches can have that perspective, then that really, bleeds over into the athletes themselves. But when you get the coaches that are not regulated emotionally themselves, whether, and they just put so much pressure on it, then that's going to go downstream as well to those athletes. So I love that you've got that perspective. And it sounds like you're doing a good job. I'm sure just the ripple effect out there in the pond, the athletes that you're working with now are internalizing that. And then when they're coaching, whether it's wrestling or parenting or teaching or whatever it might be, those things are just going to continue to make positive impacts.
Yeah, perspective is really important. I've sometimes you're right. What the wins and the loss that's not that important part. It's preparing people, right? So here's statistics that I like to use, especially when I'm talking to maybe somebody that's really been out of shape, a parent or another coach. Um, these are and I can use actually a little larger number if we went across the board. 5% of high school athletes will play sports in college. So that's a pretty small percentage, 5%. Of that 5%, less than 1% will ever play in a professional capacity. So we are a fraction of our high school athletes will ever be even college athletes, let alone a professional athlete. So no, typically our job is to prepare them to be just good humans.
Yeah.
That's what we do, So a lot of people, when you were talking about the folk style freestyle argument, um, there's a lot of things to that, and maybe at some point in time it will end up being that way. We had a lot of retraining to do, and a lot of these
Mhm.
these young athletes that are in college right now coming back to become coaches as part of that. Um, but I never look at it as, well, I guess I really don't care one way or the other. I'm coaching wrestling, whether I'm coaching freestyle or folk style, because I know that very few of you are ever going to wrestle in a college match, So that's where I take my perspective from, and I'm not too worried about I don't worry about wins and losses, of
Yeah.
course, but sometimes I even in my own high school or from my high school experience, I was a decent high school wrestler. I wasn't great because I mean, I didn't go to state but I was always so nervous about every match and so worried about every single thing. I was worried about losing. I wasn't worried about winning. Um, and then I went to college and I don't know where it happened, but I realized that in college, man, I wasn't even that great high school athlete in college. I'm not going to be obviously I'm not going to be the top college wrestler, right? So I just said, I'm doing this because I love doing this. And I didn't care if I won or lost. I just went out and did it as best as I could. And the
Mhm.
results, I actually had more college wins than high school wins, which is amazing to me. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a crazy thought. So I try to talk to people about performances. You know, if you put too much pressure on yourself to do that to win, you're not going to do well because we don't worry about winning. We actually worry about not losing, and then we
Well,
become we're not trying everything that we should be trying. We don't go for it because man, if it fails, oh my God, that's the worst thing that could ever happen is if I fail at this, but it's not. It's definitely not.
I think that as you were talking there, it got me thinking about your question earlier about sort of what made our experience with sports and growing up in Denison different. And it made me realize, like, for the most part, and there were some the exceptions here and there, but for the most part, I felt that the coaches in at Denison realized that, and maybe because there was a limited pool of people who wanted to go out for sports, but that well-rounded approach. So like they knew, like, okay, this is just what, this person is doing in the winter season, but in the spring season they're doing this, or they're only going out for cross country because they're going to be a wrestler or whatever it
Yep.
might be. Like they had this more cooperative, collaborative, and it wasn't that like my sport is the end all be all. But so there was this like, okay, we are valuing well-rounded people and athletes in particular. And of course, we weren't part of like that club scene and all of that came later. And I think that probably worked to our advantage that we didn't get
Yeah.
so caught up in this year round, if you're going to be anything, you need to be doing this sport, all year round if you're going to have that chance of like that college scholarship. But then, I'm sure it happens, in wrestling as much as I see it with other sports of the burnout that these kids hit. The parents are spending thousands and thousands of dollars and all of the time driving around, going to competitions and all of that, and then thinking the kids are going to get the college scholarship and that's why they're doing this. And then they hit, maybe junior year or even senior year. And the kid says, I'm done. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to have anything to do with this anymore. And I think I'm grateful that I didn't grow up in that time of that pressure of like to really exceed in one sport, excel in one sport, so that I was able to do multiple things. And we know now that from a physical perspective of injuries and all of that, kids should be doing
Hmm.
multiple sports. And we know
Yeah.
psychologically, but yet you still get some of those coaches that, it's like this should be my sport, and you shouldn't be, you should be quitting your other sport and coming over to me. But I don't think we had very much of that in Denison. So
Yeah. That multi-sport athlete, it's kind of sad because it is starting to go away. Not so much the smaller schools, you almost have to have multi-sport athletes or you don't
Mhm.
have sports.
Right.
We talk about that. I've definitely talked about that on podcasts with coaches and different things like that. But you're right. The repetitive injuries, for
Mhm.
always, yeah, I think now I'm at the point where it's very difficult for me to take an actual wrestling shot, to do a takedown because my knees are gone. But I was limited on the number of matches I had. I've done this a long time, but I was still limited. Um, we had like I think my senior year, I maybe had under 40 matches total, which
Mhm.
is I mean that's unheard of now. Kids are getting 50 plus matches in high school. Then they're doing an off season where they're getting another 50 matches, 100 matches a year. I've seen kids on the extreme side getting almost youth wrestlers getting almost 200 matches in a year because they do year round almost everything they can do. I'm thinking, so I made it to mid 40s before my knees said, you're not doing this any longer. That could be mid 30s or late 20s, to someone that's been doing this over and over and over again. So that's one of the reasons I think we should do multiple sports. The other thing is
Yeah,
just you
my
need a
knee
break.
injury started in high school with basketball. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
you just having that break too between sports is so important. I
Mhm.
will do after wrestling's over, after where girls are done early February, we have a AAU state tournament, which is I think is important just because it's just a good it's from like second grade all the way up, so it's kind of fun to have the high school girls at the same time. And I think it's an important meet. So they do that meet. A lot of my girls will do that meet in March. End of April, we do a dual tournament, but very few of them practice much between there. It's just kind of more for fun. And then I just took girls to Florida But again, we did like 2 or 3 practices. It's more up to them, and a lot of them, are in softball and doing other things. It's 1 or 2 things. It's not. It's maybe once a week, if even that. That I try to do it just because I know that it's going to be a long season again coming up very shortly. Um, one of the things I see in coaching girls, which is a great thing on some ends of it, and on other ends of it, it can be detrimental. The idea of being a perfectionist. I see more of that with girls, and I noticed it right away. And this is the good part. I will show a move to a boy, and he'll be like, "Yeah, I know." Okay, and then obviously he doesn't. The girl will ask me 100 questions and do it over and over and over and over again until she gets it 100% right, which is scary because nothing is ever 100% perfect. And when it happens, man, sometimes that starts that self-doubt. I can't do this, so I can't do that. And so yes, it's great having that perfectionism because man, it's fun to see someone care that much about getting the details, but then it's also scary on the other hand because no one's ever going to be perfect at it, especially in a combat sport where we're going off of, I have to worry about what you're doing, not what I'm doing too, on top of that. And,
Hmm.
and nothing's ever going to be exactly how it was in practice. What are some thoughts on perfectionism in athletes and female athletes, maybe in particular?
Yeah. Oh, well, you hit it there so perfectly, like that it's such a fine line between like a healthy amount of it that is driving you to want to be better and to learn from the dysfunctional end, when all kinds of negative things can happen. So I think it's just sort of how, and it comes back, I think, to that inner voice, not to be a broken record on that, but I think like kind of like how we talk to ourselves and the self-compassion, like that inner champion, if we can get that voice to be that instead of like that inner critic, because the inner critic and the perfectionist are just go hand in hand. But I think if you can be like, you know what, I'm going to do the best that I can here, and whatever happens, happens, and then I'm enough. I still matter. I'm a good person. Like, this isn't determining my worth as a human being. But it's hard, of course, too. Then you just add in how some people are just naturally more competitive, and so they're going to be really wanting to get those points and the wins and all of that. So it's challenging, really challenging. And I think, as we see, like as we get, later on in life, a lot of times those things that we think were serving us so well, like the inner critic, the perfectionist, we see where it starts to have a really ugly side. So again, I think it's just coming back and trying to talk to yourself, recognizing that's there. And that's that mindfulness piece that I think so few of us grew up with, of just really being in tune kind of in that present moment and like, okay, what are the voices in my head right now? So what happens if I don't win this match, or if this happens, that happens, they get these points, whatever the things happen with that. And thinking through that and realizing like what's all going on inside there is a first step of like changing the response and the reaction to it, of like, oh, okay, I hear inner critic saying like all of this stuff, but no, I'm going to talk back to it, not today, inner critic, not today, you're on the bench right now. I've heard in like sort of a meditation sort of sphere of saying, thanking the inner critic for all of the things it's helped you to do, but then telling the inner critic that she's fired, she's done her part. Now we're bringing forth sort of this inner champion where we can learn from the things that don't go well. And that's something that's helped me with the perfectionism, of realizing so many times we learn way more from the losses and from the things that don't go well than from the things that we do well. And that's the growth mindset that I'm sure you work a lot with your athletes, but just kind of like, okay, what can I learn from this? And trying to be as curious as possible rather than judgmental. Like, oh, okay, well that didn't go so well. Well, what happened with that? Or what do I need to work on? How can I grow? How can I improve? While still saying, I'm enough right as I am today. No, my performance isn't going to impact that, but that perfectionism is a vicious thing. And it's just, we want to strive for excellence, but excellence and perfectionism are very different things. And I think when we can just kind of say, I'm going to do the best that I can do on this day at this time with whatever's going on in my life, whether it's like family things or social or maybe injuries or maybe we're feeling a little under the weather of just sort of knowing we're not going to be the same exact athlete every single time we get on the mat. And just kind of saying this is going to be enough. I'm going to do the best that I can today, but then hopefully having a coach or some other trusted adult in your life that reinforces that message that you are not, your wins and losses, that you're so much more than that. But I think it
Yeah.
takes that caring, wise adult to help get that message through to young athletes in particular, because so few of them seem to have that level of maturity and wisdom. They're just so by nature, developmentally, they are like in the moment, like that is their job in adolescence, and to have everything right there, but to have that perspective, that bigger picture from a coach like you is invaluable.
I just wrote that down. Something you said there, excellence versus perfection. I like that.
Mhm.
I really do. I've been kind of jotting things as we go because that's, I got to write it down for me to remember it anymore.
I'm the same way. Same way. Yep.
Oh, yes. Pleasing others.
Mhm.
That is a inherent female trait, I
Yep.
believe. It's because and maybe it changes over time, but I think that especially generation we grew up in and those, after I looked back at my mom. She had a 9 to 5 also. She ran a business up in Denison. She ran a clothing store. My dad had his own business, but so they were both basically gone all day. But yet she came home to cook the meal, to clean the house, to do all those other things to help please and make sure the family ran properly. Just kind of how
Mhm.
the gender roles are. That's um, and I'm most of the girls are kind of in that same household, probably even still today.
Yep. Yeah.
Pleasing others. Is there some way that we can? I mean, it's not a bad trait. We don't want to, I definitely don't want to say it's a bad thing, but sometimes we worry more about pleasing others than we do about pleasing ourselves. Um,
Yeah, and that's the kicker right there. I think for so many people, girls in particular, they get this message like early on that I am here to make other people feel good. That I'm here to make my parents feel good about how I'm doing in these activities, or I'm here for, significant others or for children or whatever it might be. And then they tie their own self-worth to like, how am I making like other people feel? And we grow up hearing to thine own self be true and like all of those things. But I think it typically takes more life experience and wisdom to start to see how toxic the people pleasing thing is. But we're socialized to think it's a really good thing. Like those are the, whether it's the students, the athletes, the different things of like that are caring so much seemingly about other people. But I think what comes to my mind on that in terms of like helping with that is the overused but very wise expression that the airline gives you every time you get on a plane, and that's put your own oxygen mask on first. And that is there for a reason. Like you you will be limited in your ability to take care of other people and do all of these things that you value in your life if you're not taking care of yourself first. And then if you're not like really dialing into like, what is it that I want? If you're listening to what other people in society are telling you are the important things and this is what you should strive for, that comes at a cost. And you might not see it when you're in high school. It might be college, it might be like later on, but it's going to be there. I think kind of like that pit in the stomach of like, I haven't really been listening to my intuition that tells me I should repair bicycles in the garage. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
I've just been like saying that, well, that wouldn't be a good enough thing to do. So I think the more we can help people, especially girls, to not tie their identity into it. But then, you see where society is like, oh, but those girls, they're nasty, and you can apply all sorts of,
Oh,
nasty
yeah.
words to describing them. Like that's what people think. Like, well, if they're not a people pleaser, then they're just these other things. And so we have to sort of push back against that, having that balance between like, yes, it's important to care about other people and to be of service and all of that, but yet that all starts with taking care of ourselves and listening to our own voice and trying as best we can to honor those tugs that are on our own hearts rather than just drown them, shove them down, whatever it might be, thinking that like people won't like us if we don't do that. I see that so much in like my one-on-one clients with drinking. Like how many people, even in like their 40s, 50s, 60s, are struggling. Like they'll read all of the science, they know all of the things about, alcohol not really safe in any quantities, but so many of them continue to drink because they're afraid of making other people feel uncomfortable if they show up at a party and they're drinking a non-alcoholic beer. Like they're like, well, but then they
Hmm.
might wonder what's going on and then they won't feel comfortable drinking, and you just see how this people pleasing thing can just have legs throughout people's lives and get really toxic. But I think trying just to realize like it won't be easy. And for sure you will get some judgment. Some people might, call you names, whatever, but it still has to be at the end of the day, you're the one that has to live with yourself. If you're a religious person, it's between you and God, whatever it is. It's not about like all of these other people. But I think it's a tough one because most of us don't start to see all of the negative things of that until we're much older. And then that train has left the station. So it's a lot harder to deal with it. But I think putting your own oxygen mask on and realizing that I'm here to be me, that I was put on this planet to be my unique self. I've got my own unique ideas and voices and experiences that I've had throughout my life that are going to make me who I'm supposed to be here. And the quicker I figure that out, the better my health, well-being, relationships, everything will be. But it's a really tough one. And I think especially probably for girls that are wrestling, doing something that historically, traditionally didn't happen. I think even like with basketball and all of that, like I grew up going to basketball games as a little kid. Denison, you may not remember this, but Denison didn't get volleyball as as a sanctioned girls sport until we were in eighth grade. That was
Really?
like when it came to Denison was so even like the people 4 years older than us, they were seniors. That was like the first time it was a sport in the Denison school district. And so, it's just interesting. Like, I didn't grow up watching that. My parents weren't taking me to volleyball matches, all of that. And at that point, I was already running. So I was doing cross
Hmm.
country. But, I just didn't have like that exposure to it. So it was so different for me. But I think, gosh, that's just magnified with like wrestling, because it's so historically just like male dominated. But I love, love, love seeing all of these girls embracing it and the explosion with it. And I think just that alone, they're already taking a step toward that of like, no, this is something that I want to do. And hopefully they are doing it because it's something they want to do that and not because they're being, pushed
Yeah.
by adults like, oh, here's a way to get a college scholarship. You see those parents that are like, okay,
Yep.
is it
Yes,
is
you
it
do.
golf? Is it this? Like how many spots are there? And then like early on starting to groom the kids for that one particular sport just to, try to get a college scholarship, which as you pointed out is already going to be a very, slim chance, even with the best of athletes and coaching and all of that.
And
But
I've
I'm
sat
glad that
in.
you're aware of it and that you're working with your girls on it.
Yeah, I've sat in on enough college visits and stuff from my own to my athletes. I've been on several, and the main question is, what's your grades?
Mhm.
Because that's the one thing that we do all these things, and it's all about grades because they don't want to take the chance on somebody that's you know, a C student. If I can find somebody that's just as good at this sport that's an A student, and now I have that person for 4 years and they're not dropping out of school. So
Yep.
that's honestly the number one thing. And I've been mostly at NAIA schools and D3. D3 obviously it's about grades. It's because
Yeah.
there is no athletic scholarship tied to it, but you know that's such an important part about the scholarship getting. And um man, I had something really good in my head and I don't know what happened to it. Oh, I know. Um, one of the things that I saw not too long ago from you that I was like, oh, I got to get back in touch with Amy so we get this done because I'd contacted you, and you were busy, I was busy, and
Mhm.
stuff was one of your posts about emotions and feeling all of the emotions. And I had shared a story with you about how, in wrestling, it's kind of like there's no crying in baseball from
Hmm.
what was a League of Their Own. That's kind of how wrestling was. But I will
Yeah.
tell you, in girls wrestling, that's far from the truth. And I've learned to embrace those emotions and stuff. And I found, and I'll tell you a story. And I had a coach call me, not even it wasn't an Iowa coach, it was a coach from Nebraska. Hey, I just got the job. I'm going to be the girls coach next year. How do you deal with the emotions around the losses and all this stuff? And I said, quite honestly, it's fairly simple. When they're coming off the mat, give them a hug, tell them you love them, and you'll talk to them when they're ready. And he's like, I can't do that. And I said, what part can't you do?
Mhm.
Well, most of what you just said. And I'm like, well, first of all, if you explain everything to your athletes ahead of time, first of all, I don't care if it's male athlete, female athlete, I'm gonna give them a hug when they need a hug. Um, and then we define love in our room very early because one of our statements is family, forget about me, I love you. And
Mhm.
so I figure a 50-some-year-old male coach needs to define what love is. And that's just, I'm going to give of myself without expecting anything back from you. And if we do that as a team, we're going to be really good because we're all giving and not expecting. So I defined that right away. And I told him that. And it's amazing how many people can't embrace the emotions of life, of sport in this. So let me go back to your post because it was a really good post. Why don't you talk about embracing our emotions?
Oh, well, I think and that's something that I've been it's my life's work. I am going to be dealing with this till the day I die. And but I've always, felt that I'm, maybe more emotional than the average Joe. And I definitely struggle with like my own emotional regulation. And it was a big part of, I think, what kind of led to my more problematic drinking when it went from like being social to being self-medicating at night, upset that I'd yelled at my kids, whatever it was. And there's the alcohol to numb the shame. But I think the more that I've learned about this and dug into it, it's like I've learned that our emotions are there for a reason. Like these are things that evolutionarily have kept us alive, have kept us doing things. It doesn't mean that every single one is like necessarily right or correct or that we need to like make all these like decisions based on it, but it's like that awareness that they're there to move us. That's the name, motion is in the word emotion. It's like they're there for something. They're like a warning light on the dashboard. Because I think, right now you're probably talking primarily about negative emotions. And it's like there's something here that needs to kind of be tended to in some way. It doesn't mean that it needs some big intervention, but it might just need a hug. It might just need somebody saying it's going to be okay. Whatever it is, there's something like we need something with this. But when we, grow up or, socialized at whatever point to kind of think like, oh, those emotions are bad and I got to like shove them down, we just start suppressing them. And they are going to come out one way or another. They're like feisty little things and it might be like years down the road, but the better we are able to sit with them and just to be like, yeah, this is really awful. Like I hate these feelings. I hate losing. I hate like whatever it might be, but just like the way out is through. Like when we try to go around them and we numb and we suppress and like all the things, we're not getting the maximum benefit and we're actually really harming ourselves. So just kind of recognizing that as unpleasant as they are, they're there for a reason. And the more we can attend to them, like, they're these visitors of the heart, sometimes they move through pretty quickly once we acknowledge them. And then I just started reading a book on validation, which I think is like I was just thinking of there when you were talking about like giving them a hug and all of that after. It's like, even if we like disagree with how someone is feeling or we disagree with like their actions or whatever, how important that first step of just like validating, like, yeah, like, oh, like that sucks. That's really hard. Like, I get it, even if you don't agree with like all the other things of first validating that. And sometimes that's all that's needed. But, it's that balance between, we want to like problem solve, but so often like that ability to problem solve or to teach and learn life lessons won't even happen if we haven't first validated the emotion. And I am terrible at this. I tend to like, oh, everything's gonna be okay. You know, even like with my kids, and my daughter will call me out on this all the time. Like, you're the worst validator ever. You know, I'm like, I'm trying to get better at it. It's a hard skill if you've kind of grown up with like, you know, like I think of my mom, like very well-meaning, but I was like, oh, everything's gonna be okay, you know, but probably didn't get that validation of the nerves, of the anxiety, the perfectionism, all of that. And so we think we're helping people sometimes by glossing over that. But I think learning how to validate, and it's a skill and it's challenging. That's why I heard about it on some podcast and bought a book. And I'm like, all right, this needs to be something that I work on. But internal, and it's we also validate ourselves with it. So that's part of like that feeling, all of the emotions of recognizing that they are there for a reason, and as soon as we tend to them, and you know, whether we, you know, put on some loud music or we go for a drive or whatever it is to cope with that, then it can pass through. They're waves. Our emotions are waves, and I think people in particular who've dealt with grief can relate to that, but other emotions are the same way. Like you just kind of get hit by these waves of something, but when you try to ignore it, shove it down, whatever, it's going to be a lot more problematic than if you're like, all right, I'm going to ride this out. Like this is going to be really hard, but I will be better off at the end if I've just sort of let this thing work its way through. I'm a human being. You know, we're all going to have emotions, even when we don't want to have them. They are going to be there.
Yeah, I think you just said something too there. I see myself problem solving a lot ahead of time and not validating that. I don't know if that came from um, kind of our upbringing, the Gen X, Gen X feral children we were, without, you know, all those things that we had to solve our own problems a lot. And so I tend to do that instantly. I know that in my own relationships, you know, and stuff that I'm always trying to fix whatever. And
Yeah.
I know that's not the greatest way to approach everything, but you know, if I can't find the fix for it, then it's like frustrating for me.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So yeah.
Yeah, and I'm working on that too. That is totally my default, of just trying to fix whatever my friend or loved one, you know, even if it's not like a one-on-one client, I just want to fix. So I'm working at getting better at this sort of like just kind of validating the emotion. And that's what they said, that like, you know, people who are counselors and therapists and all of that, that's what they're trained to do is just to first like just to really validate what that person is feeling. And this book is going through like, you know, like, but you're not saying everything is valid, you know, but you know, sometimes you may not be able to validate like the behavior or the thought. It's usually a little bit easier to validate the emotion, but yeah,
Yeah.
good book.
What they're feeling is valid, but yes,
Mhm.
yes, I know that teacher was horrible to you today, but you know, those types of things.
Yep.
Um, One of the things I like to do, and it's going to be maybe a little bit different in my podcast every time I try to get to know people a little bit better, but it's amazing how these questions actually bring out other things. Um, and and yes, a lot of these have to do with wrestling, so I will try not to use those, but I have plenty that don't, and we'll see how things go. And I'm going to just start um, in your household. Do you have any pets?
I have three. Well, actually, at the moment, I have a grand bunny that is staying here temporarily. So I would say I have
So
three
you're
dogs and a bunny that is not mine.
and how is being a grand bunny parent or grandparent? I don't even know how that would work, but how is being a parent or grandparent to a bunny?
It's a little bit different. So yeah, didn't grow up with that animal at all, and they're not actually, you know, people think I'm like, oh, you pick them up and they sit on your lap and they're cuddly, but generally most of the time, like I guess they have fragile spines and you're not really supposed to do that. So I'm like, all right, I'm taking the romaine lettuce in and giving like the little snacks and some little pets of it, but it's good practice for me, I guess, someday of thinking like, you know, that I might be like you and hopefully get to be a grandparent someday. But yeah,
Yeah,
mostly a
that's
dog person though. Like grew up with
what kind of
dogs.
yeah, me
Yeah.
too. What kind of dogs do you have?
Currently, and they're all surrounding me here. So our oldest one is a little um terrier Chihuahua mutt mix. We would have never probably got her if we knew she was a Chihuahua, but doggy DNA showed that. And she's about 13. And then we have a COVID puppy that's now 5. And it's a German Shepherd. And then our newest addition is about a year and a half. And he, according to doggy DNA, is like border collie, shepherd, retriever, husky, kind of almost all in equal things. So yeah,
Nice.
he's he we had a dog that died last September. She was a black lab mix and was probably about 12 or 13 when she passed. So she had a long, good life for a bigger dog, but she had 3 legs. And this dog that replaced her also is a tripod. So we're proud
Oh,
tripod family.
that's cool. That is neat. Yeah, dogs are such I absolutely love dogs. I've had many, many, many dogs, but yeah, the loss of a dog is almost harder than I would almost say loss of even a family member in
Well,
some cases.
especially
You
one
know,
because they're in your home. Yeah, they're
yeah,
like part of your day-to-day life. Like, so,
yeah,
yeah, you lose a family member that lives outside your home. Yes, it can be really hard, but there's something about like this is part of every morning, every night, every, sandwich that we couldn't leave on the counter because the
yeah,
dog would grab it, or the dog hair that, you really miss when they're gone. But yeah.
yeah. Well, I've had pugs. Well, this Baxter is my fourth
Oh,
third pug, sorry, yeah, third pug, and they're just crazy. But then I was in actually on the way back from a trip from Florida wrestling trip, and I ran into a guy that had an American Bully. The head on this thing was like this big, and we had just actually lost my mom and dad's when they passed away. I got their Willow was her name, and she was a what's Lady in the Tramp is a Cocker Spaniel. Yeah, so we
okay.
had Lady for our my parents had Lady, and then they got Willow, and then I got Willow after they passed away, and Willow had just passed away on our trip. I felt so bad for the girl that was house sitting for us and
Oh,
started dog sitting.
yeah.
But then I saw this American Bully that was a huge dog, and I've never been a real huge dog person. But when we got back, my wife saw an ad in American Bullies, so we went and got Bella, and I think she thinks she's a pug because she's scared of, I mean, this dog, she's 70-ish pounds. Baxter's 20. She's scared of Baxter. Very, she thinks she can sit on your lap all the time. Yeah, but she's more my wife's dog. Baxter's more my dog. But
Yeah, it's
no,
interesting that pecking order and how the one that's there will sort of
hmm
train the new one and
yeah,
this is
it's
how it
crazy.
is. And yeah.
Now, if you could have any pet, domestic or exotic, you could be the next Tiger King or Tiger Queen if you wanted. What pet would you get?
Well, I am just such a dog lover that I haven't really thought about like, oh, I'd like to get a different kind of pet. But I think when I just think of like cuteness and all of that, I think of like, oh, like koala bears or something like that, but I don't know, they're not necessarily all that snuggle either, but that's kind of sort of
They
jumped
look snuggly.
jumped into my mind. Yeah, but really I'm just a dog lover. Like I think I would just continue to have dogs, and as painful as it is to lose them, I just feel like, okay, the Rainbow Bridge and they're there and we're just gonna
Yeah.
keep being loved by more and more dogs, and we're big, kind of like, rescue family, so we're always, like getting them from the shelters or the rescue groups and all of that, but they're doing the rescuing of us. I just was
Oh, for
gone for
sure.
for almost 2 weeks, and like the hardest part was like just like being away from my dogs. So
Yes. Yeah, I love them. Typically, I ask this of a wrestling shoe, but I'm just going to say in shoes. I have gotten to, I don't know if I picked it up from my mother, but I've become quite a shoe person. And I've actually made it part of my coaching identity too. I will get crazy shoes just to, and maybe, and it's my way of saying, hey, I don't have to be like everybody else. Like this year, I wore hot pink Nike Dunks to our wrestling meet. And I actually had some male coaches ask me about that, later on. And it was
oh,
mostly because they thought that it was actually a middle school coach that said something to me. Yeah, and you showed up in pink shoes, and I was like, yeah, you're kind of I won't go into our conversation,
Yes.
but it was twofold. I'm helped with the girls' union, and actually, I want to talk about the girls. I said this. We'll go into some other questions. That was my thought from before the girls' union, but everybody at the girls' union and Gene Berger actually had started it wearing the pink shoes, and now all of them, whether they're guys, girls, they all wear pink shoes to all their events and stuff. So I'm on the, this is my last year because it's in terms, on the girls' union advisory board for wrestling and
Mhm.
stuff. And also I had a few girls that really were into the pink, and I never was. I'm wearing a pink shirt today even,
Yep.
um, but I never would wear it. And then I just was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go ahead and embrace it. So I
Yes.
went with
Well,
the
thank you for your service
yeah
to the board and to the state
yeah.
of Iowa and all of the lives, I think again, that ripple effect in the pond that are impacted by the girls that are going to get these athletic opportunities that are going to shape and change the course of their lives, not necessarily with college, sports, but so many things. So thank you for serving on that board and for just having the courage to be bold with the pink shoes. So
But we'll go to the girls' union. I didn't. They had parallels, and you talked about volleyball, in Denison not coming until our eighth grade year, which I didn't even remember that. But girls basketball was a thing, but they were talking about getting rid of it because it was such a physical thing, and women should not be doing these things. And it was actually the small schools that embraced girls basketball more so, and they formed a group, the Iowa High School Athletic Girls Union, and saved the sport of basketball. And I put parallels to that with wrestling because, well, girls shouldn't be wrestling. You heard that all the time
Mhm.
and stuff. So there was that parallel too. But it's in at the beginning when people were saying, well, they don't want to sanction it because they don't know anything about it, all these things. And if we just let the boys association sanction it, or if we didn't have the girls union, it would already be sanctioned and all these things. But then I became involved with the girls' union, and it's amazing how amazing that group is, and how um, like people are jealous. Other states are jealous of the state of Iowa through our state tournaments because the girls' union puts on a event. It is not just a basketball tournament. It is not just the softball tournament going on right now, the wrestling tournament. I mean, we're in Coralville. They deck Coralville out. One of the Hawkeyes wears pink that weekend.
Mm.
Everything's there. They have it's just crazy what they do. But I, the way that organization is, it's amazing. But man, I can't believe I didn't realize that volleyball didn't come to Denison until your eighth grade year. That's
Yep.
crazy. We had soccer in Denison before that. I
Did we?
remember yes, I remember being a little kid, probably, and playing, not high school soccer, but playing soccer. And my dad's like, "Well, I usually don't let you do this, but if you want to quit, go ahead." Yes, I didn't understand the sport, and he didn't like the sport.
Ah.
So,
Yeah, I
but
remember. I
yeah,
think I think Jill Coleman's dad was real instrumental
yes,
in getting
yeah,
soccer, at least like as a rec sport
yep.
there.
It was a
I
Rex,
don't
and
remember what year it officially became like a high school sport. I don't remember it when we were in high
it
school, but I
was some of,
remember like yeah, just rec league, AYSO type of
yeah,
deal.
some of the freshmen I know were on the soccer team. I think Brent Johnson was on the soccer team, possibly. If not, I know Hal Cobb, or not Hal, Eric Cobb. Hal was our grade. So I remember them being on the soccer team in Denison. So it wasn't too far behind us. But yeah, that's crazy that volleyball. I love the sport of volleyball. That is a fun sport to watch all around. That's men's and women's. But again, it's a completely different sport.
Yeah,
And
and I
then you
wish we
mentioned,
kind of had it growing up because whenever, college and intramurals and everything since, people look at my 6'2" height and they just of
yeah,
course assume I'm a volleyball player. And I'm like, no, no, no. I suck at volleyball. Like really, like I never learned it. I'm terrible at just like all the things, and then in terms of it was interesting talking about the physicality of sports and all of that.
yeah,
I thought, of course, that when I had kids, that they would, likely be really athletic or that I would support that. But I tried really hard too, just to kind of let them do their thing. I didn't want to
yep,
say like you need to be just like mom, but like when they were younger, expose them to different things, see what they were interested in. And my daughter ended up starting after her freshman year of high school playing water polo of all things, which I didn't
Oh,
really know
wow.
like anything about, but talk about like an aggressive sport. And initially when she was younger, we said, that might be a good sport for you because she loves swimming and
Uh-huh.
that was like she was like a water girl, but she's like, oh no, I hear how mean those girls are, and they sharpen their toenails and they like do all this stuff and mean things underwater. But then she ended up being a goalie because she's tall as well, and the coach was like, well, we need those long arms and that big body there in the goal. But yeah, super super physical sport that we get to watch out here in California.
So yeah, that's cool. So yeah, different areas have different sports. Like Ben's volleyball in California is quite big,
Mhm.
is or high
Yep.
school boys volleyball,
Yes,
where
it is.
I know Grandview University. I'm at Grandview a lot for practice wrestling and stuff. They have one of the best NAIA men's teams in the country, but I don't think we have any boys volleyball in Iowa.
Oh, and for the
Not
state of
yet.
Iowa, it's not a high
Yeah,
school sport. No.
no. But is water polo a high school sport, or is that more of a club? It's a high school
It's
sport.
it's club as well, but it's a high school sport in, not every
Yeah.
school, of course, in California, but Southern California in particular. Then I think like in Northern California, in the larger metropolitan areas, because you've got to, have the pools and all that sort of stuff. And a lot of the smaller schools may not have a pool for all of that. But
I don't know how well you follow it, but I wonder in today's, the NILs and all this, how Olympic sports are going to survive. Um, e- Example, Iowa State was going to build a new wrestling facility and start, it was about COVID time. They had the funding and start a women's wrestling team about this just after Iowa did. But with
Mhm.
NIL, they've stopped decided not to build because they need that money to make sure they can fund their revenue sports.
Yeah. Oh, it's such I have just such mixed feelings about it,
Hmm.
like I want obviously the athletes to get paid for some of the things, but yeah, it's there's so many, I think, unintended consequences of stuff like that. But yeah.
So I guess I should go back to my question. What's your favorite pair of, I know you ran, so what brand of running shoe is yours?
Currently it's Hoka.
Oh,
So, but it might be just because, I'm older and I feel like I need more of the
yep.
joint cushion, but I gave up running about probably 15, 18 years ago. So I had like a knee injury from basketball senior year
Hmm.
and tore some cartilage. And then that had to be, trimmed up again when I was in law school. And it was, never super happy with all the aggressive impact of running. And I was told you probably should consider giving up running. But I was very stubborn and didn't want to do that for a while. But eventually I said, all right, let me try walking. Very hard to get the heart rate up, but I stuck with it, and now I'm actually this power walker. So I'm out there really fast on the streets in my Hokas. And initially, interesting, you're talking about the color thing, because I used to always just be like a white athletic shoe sort of person. I was never like bold and colors. But again, like it was like once I ditched alcohol and started just to really tune in to my own heart and less ditch the people pleasing and all of that, then I'm like, no, yeah, I'm gonna get these bold, orange ones or the blues or whatever it might be. Hoka's got some fun colors on.
Yes.
And I usually get the Bondi, but also a little hard for me to be a shoe person because as a tall person, I also had a big foot, so I'm about a size 12 in women's. So I often had to go with like a men's shoe growing up. They
Oh
didn't even
yeah.
have women's shoes and my size. And still to this day in athletic shoes, that's often the case. They might go up to a 10 or maybe 11, but then us tall women sometimes have to go to the male shoe, and then that doesn't fit as well because usually our foot's a little narrower. So yeah, but I can't really be a shoe girl when my feet are this big.
Yes. I also have gone with the Hokas myself. My everyday shoes are Hokas. I have orange and blue, or a orange pair and a blue pair,
Hmm.
because they are fun to
Yep.
wear.
I'm I'm
Um,
I'm a I'm a diehard right now. I feel like as long as the hips and the knees and everything else are happy,
yeah,
we're gonna keep the same footwear.
yeah. I will tell you, we're in like on a full day tournament. I started with I customized some Converse All Stars, And
Mm.
being on your feet all day long on Converse All-Stars is just not something that can
There's no
happen.
support. Yeah.
So that's when I went with the Air Force Ones and the Dunks the next couple of years, and they're still a little bit rough on you because they're still pretty much a court shoe and a flat shoe. So I probably I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I got that's why I started with Hawkeyes.
Yeah.
So um, one of the big questions I talk about wrestlers with is the foods, after weigh-ins foods, if we could just go eat anywhere. But since, you didn't have to worry about a sport that maintained weight and all this stuff, I'll use my favorite question. I ask them to see what they're going to do. You could go out to eat anywhere you wanted to go out to eat. Where would you go and what would you have?
Mm. I have actually never been a big foodie. I mean, I've gone through phases where I've like, weighed too much and all of that, ate too much in terms of like ice cream and sweets and chips and that kind of stuff. But over the years, I've really just, and it'll sound bad to probably a lot of people, but I am just a salad lover. And I love, give me some good grilled chicken on it and a really rich, creamy dressing, blue cheese or something like that. Like lots of like yummy stuff in the salad. But that's really kind of like been my go-to lately. But I also, my daughter was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and celiac when she was at the end of her freshman year. And
Uh-huh.
and I'd kind of been having some suspicions that I might have some of my own issues with gluten. So when I cut gluten out, my health improved tremendously. So it really like steered me away from like a lot of, like the
Yeah.
pastas, things like that I would normally love. And then I just started to like eat much healthier, a lot more salads and protein and healthier carbohydrates. Like I'm not like no carb by any means, but I just try to be more mindful and then just being aware of like how it impacts, my physical health, my sleep, my mental health, all of it. So I've become a much healthier, cleaner eater. And then even when I think about like pizzas and all of that, I'm just kind of like,
Yeah.
how am I going to feel after I eat that? But my daughter did just recently tell me, and I don't know if the Domino's back there are doing it, but they have a gluten-free crust now they've introduced, and it's not
Oh.
like completely celiac friendly because
Uh-huh.
of the contaminants and all of that, but they're offering a gluten-free pizza crust, and I had some of it last week and it was delicious. So I might have to like start rethinking my pizzas now that the gluten-free crusts are getting better. So
Yeah, I will take
not quite
my
our Pizza Hut
daughter's.
when we were growing up, dipping everything in
Yes.
all of our white
Yeah.
sauce and all that.
Love the white sauce. Yes.
Yeah.
No, my daughters have they're the little gluten intolerance and for sure. So we've been kind of conscious of that a lot also. One thing I do, and it's funny because I told Joey this too. I've always been an ice cream person because I'm away of the best Dairy Queen in the state. And
Hmm.
I told him, I said, it's funny because I'm the only person I know of that maybe it's just our household. We had the dialogue. Remember the dialogues, to get in the
Uh-huh.
house. So we
Oh,
had
we had
dialogue.
one too.
The Swans man knew our dialogue number, knew how to get to the basement to the freezer to do. We had a build to list. So even if
Hmm.
we weren't home, and then the check would be on the on the table. So I grew up eating ice cream. Do you have a guilty pleasure food?
Oh, mine is ice cream as well. Yep, and it's like a coffee like chocolate chip sort of thing is my go-to. And when I'm being healthier with it, I'll get one of uh they have these keto ice creams now.
Yeah.
And my husband watches, his sugars a lot. And with my daughter being diabetic, like she should be watching hers more. She can still eat things if she's dosing the insulin for him. So I feel like I'm healthier if I get like the Rebel ice cream, which is kind of hard to find, but they have a coffee one and it is just out of this world. So yep, ice cream for me too.
Yeah, ice cream is the greatest thing. It's kind of its own food group as far as I'm concerned. And there's always room because it'll melt around all the other food. So yeah,
Mhm.
I've lost my bikini body. So, Um, yeah, most of my travel anymore ends up being around a wrestling meet. That's where I kind of do. I go to Florida a couple times a year, and I just travel around. We've been kind of all over the place, um, but I love travel. But if you had the opportunity, take a vacation anywhere you'd like to go, where would you go?
Currently, I would say Scotland. So I've actually never been to Europe and I've done very little travel growing up. My parents, I mean, we would travel in the US, maybe we'd go visit family in Idaho or
Hmm.
California, visit my dad's family, but we didn't do much. Now, my husband grew up as a massive world traveler. His parents really value travel and they did a lot. And he might have gotten a little bit of burned out on it. So we haven't done like a lot of it together, but like our son, he did a 17-day trip to Europe when he was in junior high, like with a People to People International. They did a big group. So I haven't done a whole lot of it, but my husband's family, a lot, or at least half of it comes from Scotland. And I've always just thought like it looks so beautiful. So I've started toying with like one of those Scotland, Iceland trips where you kind of combine them together. And I think there's even a cruise in between them. But before that, next month, I actually get to go. I'm super excited. God willing, I have a 15-day Alaska trip that my
Oh,
husband
very
and I are
exciting.
taking my mom and her sister on. We're doing 8 days on land. And so Princess is our cruise line, and I guess they have these wilderness lodges. So you get to go more remote, maybe see more wildlife, we're hoping, but we'll do 8 days on land and then a 7-day cruise after. And we have never done anything remotely like that. I don't think my husband and I have taken even more than a 1 week vacation or trip anywhere. So this will be a full 2 weeks, and we're going to start in Iowa so that we can accompany my mom and her sister on the travel to Alaska and back from Vancouver. So we've got that coming up next, but then I think the next big one will be Scotland, Iceland if I get my way. So.
Very cool. Very cool. Um, I always ask people about this, pre-match ritual type things, listening to music. I don't think it was as big because we would have to carry around the big Walkman and, I remember the yellow Walkman with, yeah,
Yes.
so,
You couldn't
but did
Michael
you,
Phelps it the same way he
no, no, just doesn't work quite the same. Um, I've always liked music, it's one of the things I was never, definitely not a band person or a choir person, but I love music. What's your favorite type of music?
Oh, it varies a lot over the years, I think. And we just got back from Nashville. My sister wanted me to come down for a girls' trip. So I'm kind of getting my country on, right now. 80s music is probably the 80s station on XM is probably the one that I've got playing the most often, but I mix it around a lot too. So, but let's say 80s.
No. I don't know where this happened. Probably was with my kids, but I really became a Disney cartoon fan.
Hmm.
Do you have a favorite Disney cartoon?
Lion King.
Hmm.
Yep,
Have
for
you
sure.
watched the live action Mufasa by chance yet? I
Yep.
actually felt that
Loved
was
it.
really that was probably one of my favorite live action ones. Really good, really good.
Yep.
And then usually
Loved
I go in to ask the question, if you could wrestle any Disney character, which Disney character would you wrestle? But if you could fist fight any Disney character, which one
Oh
would you take
gosh.
on?
I don't know. Maybe Scar if we're gonna go with Lion King, but yeah.
And maybe you're just too busy for this, but do you binge any TV shows right now?
Um, my husband and I are watching, gosh, I'm blanking on it right now. White Lotus. That is our
Oh,
newest one that we've just started on that.
I've
But
started that also myself.
yep.
It's
Yeah, we just got through like the first season, but he travels a lot for work and I don't tend to watch a lot when he's not here. We'll watch stuff together, but we're very excited for the next season of Lincoln Lawyer to come out. That's one that we really
mhm.
have liked together. I just read today that the fourth season of Ted Lasso has started production. Love, love, love Ted Lasso. Of course, I'm sure anybody in
Yeah.
sports is, drawn to that in particular. But yeah, those are the ones. Not really much on, creepy, horror sort of, crime stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. My wife tends to watch well, for a long time she was on the Snapped and the Kill My Husband and It's Okay thing. So I was really getting worried that, I was gonna have to notify people that maybe she's planning something, but we've watched this smuggling caught at the border type things,
Oh,
and they're actually kind of interesting. So I don't think I'm gonna start a new career as a drug dealer anytime soon because it seems like they're catching more people now. So yeah.
good choice.
So
Good choice,
yeah.
Troy.
A
Proud of
lot
you.
of the girls, are watching Love Island. I gave it
Mm.
about a 2 episode try, and I'm not going to continue to watch Love Island. It's not, so I wouldn't pick it up. It's all right. But
I
no,
heard
I,
we tried we gave one episode a try of Severance and that was people were just raving about it.
yeah,
And maybe we need to do more of a try, but after one episode we're like, yeah, we're not sure we're really feeling this. But with the critical accolades, maybe we'll have to try it again. But
yeah, I have one of my friends at work. He talked about it all the time, and I've not watched it yet. That doesn't seem like I have a lot of time to it's so hard and there's so much. It's not like the 4 TV stations we had growing up and cable just coming to town and and even when we had the full cable it was like maybe 20 stations tops and they were all about the
yeah,
same. So,
we're still more of like
um,
comedy, like, Big
oh
Bang
yeah.
Theory and Young
Hmm.
Sheldon and My Name is Earl and like a lot of those shows. Sometimes so we'll binge some of those older ones
Yeah.
and just kind of go back through the seasons on those more than the new things.
Um, someone in athletics that inspires you. So right now there's so many new female wrestlers. There's all these great ones the girls, it's real easy to have them pick out somebody that's like really, really good. But in athletics, I've really actually got an appreciation for like Michael Jordan and Larry Bird and that's recent for me because I'd never watched basketball and stuff. So going back and watching some of these, is there someone that inspired you as a younger athlete?
Um, as a younger athlete, I just remember like just Denison high school girls. Like I remember Kathy O'Neill, like was like,
Hmm.
the O'Neill family, super
Yeah,
tall. Like I would just watch like the Denison girls and be sort of inspired by them. I think currently, of course, very unoriginal, but I love our Iowa girl, Caitlin Clark,
yeah,
I've gone to several of the Iowa women's games and have watched one of her when they came out to California last year and played the LA Sparks and planning to go see her again. Hopefully she'll be off her injury
yeah.
status here in a couple weeks. We've got tickets to see her in LA. But yeah, absolutely love what Caitlin Clark is doing for women's sports in general. And I see it sort of extending beyond just basketball. So and
It's
the fact that
amazing
she's
how one,
Iowa and all that.
yeah, one person. I mean, I know there's others, but really the kind of this that focus that one person can make a huge difference. I
Mhm.
mean, man, it's amazing. I mean, just even like you just said, you're going to watch her. You didn't say I'm
Mhm.
going to watch Indiana Fever,
Right.
So I mean, yeah, it's just amazing. And I was never again, I still don't watch basketball. I couldn't tell you other than some couple really big names because I've heard them on the men's basketball. So I can probably actually tell you more at WNBA players than I
Yeah.
can NBA players
I
because
think
of
in the US, probably more people, if you ask them to name a college, athlete. I mean, of course she's not she graduated, but I think, more people knew of her than they did even of a male athlete, which is pretty cool for women's sports.
yeah. Um, I ask this question too, and it's usually what that one thing that you heard in the back of your head from a wrestling coach over and over and over and over again. But you're in other sports. What's something probably I'm going to guess Coach Lyons maybe said in the back of your head that you still to this day maybe hear.
I don't know if it was coach in basketball. I think of cross country and track. So I'm not sure if it was like Coach Locken with the distance coach
Hmm.
in track or if it was Coach Hagan with cross country, but it was get out of the comfort zone. So again, as a
Yeah.
long distance runner, they had plenty of time to yell at us. It was not a
Oh
sprint,
yeah.
be doing, minimum 2 laps around the track, maybe 4 or 8, and then out on the cross country course. But it was always like get out of the comfort zone. And that has served me so well in life. And it's something I think too with like habit change and the things that I work with people around, how often we get stuck in the comfort zones and whether we're using, alcohol to numb and escape or food or screens or shopping, whatever it is, but how much of our life is waiting for us on the other side of the comfort zone. And the more we can get out of that and embrace the discomfort and learn from it, the better. So.
Yeah, isn't that true? I would like even when I told you I had Mary Getch up, I said, Mary Getch, you ever think you'd see me doing something like this? And she's absolutely not, because I was pretty quiet, pretty shy, didn't really. I mean, I kind of kept I had a great group of friends. I still have a great group of friends. A lot of our friends from high school, similar people, I'll talk to them more than even my college. People say your college friends will be your friends for life. Now I got a group of about 5 or 6 or 7 high school friends that I still to this day talk to. But
Same here. Same here. The high school are closer than college. Yep.
yeah, when I started coaching girls wrestling, I had to go find partners for girls that were wrestling. And I have to go talk to parents. I'd have to go talk to girls. It was always kind of odd, I was in my 40s going and talk to a high school girl, hey, do you want to, do you want to come over here and wrestle? Not me, but, it was just one of those. But I had to get used to talking to people, and it really brought me out of this whole, kind of keeping to myself and stuff. So it's amazing. And then to think that I would ever do a podcast, or obviously that didn't exist until recently. That would have never been on my mind. And that I've talked to, well, I think this is 53, 54 episodes, plus I've done probably 15, 20, 30 mini or smaller episodes with like youth wrestlers or high school girls or just little things like that. And to talk to people, it's just not in my character, not in my family's character, be those quiet,
Yeah.
keep to yourself German people of I grew up around. But yeah, getting out of your comfort zone, such an important thing. It
Yeah.
really is. And it's
Yep.
for what you're doing now, I would guess that you had to get out of your comfort zone some to do what you're
Oh,
doing.
oh, for sure. Like the coaching thing, the speaking thing less so because I was always comfortable, like, give me a microphone, whether it's at church or whatever. Like I love to get up and speak, do public speaking. But the coaching thing, when that kind of started just to land on my heart that like I should help people with these things, I would say, I never thought of myself as a coach for anything beyond my daughter's preschool t-ball team. Like that was like the extent of it. But I think a lot of that was the imposter syndrome and the perfectionism that played into that. And I thought, I don't have my life together. It's not perfect. Who am I to think that I could, help anybody with coaching? But it was just a tug there that I couldn't escape. And I'm so glad that I listened to it. And I still, have to deal with, again, the like, oh, I didn't help that client with that, or they're still
Hmm.
struggling with this, whatever it might be. But I'll bet you've got people that listen to your podcast. And I'm guessing with the explosion of girls wrestling, there's probably a big need for people to get in, whether at the volunteer level or,
Yes.
the high school level to get the training for the coaching. So for all of
There's a
you, I'm encouraging you, if you've got that little tug, push through the imposter syndrome and the perfectionism. I think that tug is there for a reason, and we need you, and we need that help to grow this sport even more and to help influence all of those lives and the lives they're going to touch from this.
Yeah, I've used this many times, and I'll let you. You might like it. You might use it for a post or something. Um, when your passion starts helping people, it becomes your purpose.
Mm.
And that's one of those things that I've used for a long time. And I don't remember who I heard that from again. Very few things
Mhm.
are original, but I've always liked that. And I was like, yeah, wrestling's always been a passion of mine. But as I've been able to help people, it's become, growing girls wrestling has become a purpose in life.
Oh,
So
I'm so grateful for you doing that. And yeah, super
so
proud of you, Troy. On behalf of all the members of the class of '89 of Denison, I think I can speak for everybody saying
yeah,
that
I feel so
how
bad I
proud
didn't
we
get to
are of
make
you.
it to. I really so badly wanted to make it to this class reunion and I missed it. And I was, it just we had some family things come up. It just kind of sucked because I've always enjoyed. That's one thing I've actually have enjoyed. And a lot of people hate class reunions, but I've really enjoyed ours because it just seems like I think we had a pretty decent class. But I think everybody is maybe it's after that 5 year class reunion, everybody's been hit by life just a little bit, and you realize that, oh, we all have, there's no longer these different little cliques and stuff that we maybe grew up with. That
Yeah.
man, life sucks sometimes. They keep
Mhm.
sending you those things called bills, and they expect you to pay them, and then bad things happen to everybody and stuff. So yeah, I've always enjoyed our class because I think we had a really good group.
Yeah.
And I know from being around teachers a lot, I'm not teaching, but being around teachers a lot, there are groups that come through that,
Mm.
oh, this is a really good class coming through, or oh, that class is going to be a rough one, so I think we probably had one of those good classes.
Yeah, and it is neat
Here,
to see, just as you said, like kind of
yeah,
some of those barriers come down, the more life everybody has, the less those sort of social cliques and who was, the in
yeah,
group or the out group or whatever. Like it just everybody's just all together and we've got that common background and it's just so neat. Like even if you weren't super close in high school, you've got those experiences of growing up in Denison with the same teachers and all
yeah.
of that. That's
Well, even like you
really
and I
special.
mean, we were on the cross country team together. But other than that, we didn't have a lot of
Mhm.
shared, mutual friends or anything. I had different groups of friends. You had different groups of friends. And we knew each other. I think even in college a little bit, hanging out a little in the summertime. I think I ran into you a few times and
Yep.
probably got to know you better at that time than I did even
Mhm.
through high school, So it's
Yeah.
it's it's really I think those are important things to get to know people, embrace those relationships and stuff. So now,
Connections,
um,
but it's all about, we know
it
it's like
it,
one of
it
the best predictors of healthy aging, it's like not having the connection is worse than what they say, smoking 15 cigarettes a day, so.
now here's a fun one that I like to throw in because it throws everybody off a little bit. Um, you've just become a superhero. What superpower do you have?
Ooh. I think I'm gonna say flying. Yeah,
It would make
flying.
travel a lot easier.
It sure
No more,
would.
no more TS, no more TSA.
Especially as a 6'2" person trying to cram into those seats without a lot of leg room. But yeah, flying would
Very
be
much.
be really cool.
I think I've reached kind of the end of my questions. I always leave the very last thing for anybody that's on and kind of a final thoughts of reflection on anything and on life and the interview. A lot of times it's about wrestling, but it's not this time. So
No, no, but I
final
do I
thoughts are
do wish
yours.
that my daughter had experienced girls wrestling. Like I know it's a high school sport here in California, but I just don't
Yeah.
remember like it being um like something that we saw like when they were little or whatever as a club thing, but yeah, not something that but she would have been good at it because she is very very feisty and strong and I just think that would have been a very good thing for her. But no, I sometimes when I've done some of these other podcasts, I finish just talking about this concept that I wish more people could embrace. And it's this concept of kintsugi. So it's this Japanese ceramic art form. And when I heard about it, it landed so powerfully for me, and I try to share it as widely as I can. And it's this concept that, and when they would have this ceramic art form that would break, they would glue the pieces back together, but they wouldn't just glue them together with super glue or Elmer's glue because those would hide the cracks. So this kintsugi art form is where they mix gold dust into the glue, or sometimes silver or platinum, but they accentuate the cracks. Like they honor them, they celebrate them. They don't pretend that like life is never messy and that we're never broken. And oftentimes these pieces of art that are these repaired, that have the gold dust and the cracks and all of that, they're even more valuable, more beautiful, stronger than the unbroken piece of ceramic. So I like to think about that when I'm kind of going through my tough times and all that. And I just like to share that with other people as well. And I think athletes in particular, when you've had just a really tough disappointing thing, stuff isn't going right, whatever, of just kind of remembering that concept of the gold dust and the cracks, and that we all possess, the gold dust to help other people be even more strong and beautiful and valuable than they were before these tough things that happened in their life.
Oh, very nice. Like that a lot. That is very good. I'm gonna hit the stop button on the recording. And
All right.
sometimes I think I never should hit the stop button because sometimes the conversations that come afterwards are gold. But that's all right. I'm gonna hit the stop button. Otherwise, we'll never end.